We all carry burdens. Invisible to the human eye, they weigh heavy on our hearts. Like stones tucked away in our pockets, we carry them with us wherever we go. They are the echoes of words left unspoken, the ache of love withheld, the ghosts of moments lost. These unseen wounds shape us, define us, and often hold us captive in cycles of pain and regret.
For me, the silence was deafening. My childhood home echoed with the absence of my father, a long-haul trucker who chased miles and deadlines more readily than he embraced me. The rumble of the truck engine fading into the distance each morning became the soundtrack to my loneliness. I became well acquainted with the art of counting cracks in the ceiling, a way to numb the pain of his emotional distance. Silence, I learned, was easier than the ache of waiting for a phone call that rarely came, a birthday card that never arrived. The weight of absence pressed down on me, a heavy blanket woven from unanswered questions and unfulfilled longings.
Years later, the sterile silence of a hospital room became Michael's battleground. Holding his newborn daughter, he felt a tremor run through him. Not the tremor of a father overwhelmed with love, but the tremor of a man wrestling with the ghosts of his past. His reflection in the window morphed for a fleeting moment, the lines of his face blurring into the familiar contours of his father's.
What if I become him?
Fear, sharp and cold, gripped his heart. Sleep became a luxury, each night a blur of rocking a crying baby while his reflection whispered insidious lies.
You'll fail her too. You're destined to repeat the mistakes of the past.
The cycle of pain, once a distant echo, now threatened to consume him. Michael's every interaction with his daughter became a tightrope walk between love and fear, his own wounded heart a barrier to the unconditional affection he so desperately wanted to give. The past, it seemed, had an unshakable grip on the present. Rain lashed against the window pane, mirroring the turmoil in Michael's soul. His phone vibrated on the table, the insistent buzzing pulling him from his thoughts. He stared at the unfamiliar number, a knot of apprehension tightening in his chest. As he hesitantly answered, the faint beeping of a ventilator served as a stark prelude to the voice on the other end.
Michael, it's Dad. I'm sick. I'd like to see you.
The words hung in the air, a lifetime of unspoken emotions condensed into a single heart-wrenching plea. Years of silence shattered with the fragility of a life nearing its end. The news hit Michael with the force of a physical blow. His father, the man who had always seemed invincible in his absence, was now reaching out, his voice heavy with regret and the unspoken burden of a lifetime of missed opportunities. In that moment, the image of a decaying truck in a junkyard flickered through Michael's mind, a poignant symbol of his father's decline and the weight of their fractured relationship. The phone call echoed in the quiet of the house, a stark contrast to the years of silence that had defined their relationship. Michael hung up, the weight of his father's request settling heavily upon him. He walked, as if in a trance, towards the attic door, a portal to the past, a repository of memories both cherished and buried. The air was thick with dust motes dancing in the single bare bulb's light. The musty scent of old wood and time forgotten hung heavy. Michael navigated through the labyrinth of forgotten furniture and childhood relics, each item a silent testament to the passage of time. And then he saw it, a simple shoebox, tucked away on a shelf, its cardboard faded and worn. He lowered himself onto the creaking floorboards, his fingers tracing the outline of the box, hesitant to break the seal on years of unspoken emotions. This box, he sensed, held more than just forgotten trinkets. It held fragments of his father, pieces of a life lived on the road, and the echoes of a love that had always felt just out of reach. With trembling hands, Michael lifted the lid. The musty scent of time filled his nostrils, a bittersweet aroma of memories. Inside lay faded photographs and yellowed letters. Each item held a story, a testament to a father's love. Michael's heart ached with sadness and newfound understanding. weight of the silence that had shrouded their relationship began to lift, replaced by a wave of empathy for the man who had tried, however imperfectly, to reach out across the miles. The truck driver, the provider, the man who had always seemed so emotionally distant, was revealed in these small acts of love to be a man grappling with his own limitations, a man who perhaps longed for connection as much as his son had.
The realization was both liberating and heartbreaking. Liberating because it allowed me to release the bitterness and resentment I had carried for so long. Heartbreaking because it highlighted the missed opportunities, the conversations never had, the love that had remained unspoken for far too long.
In that moment, surrounded by the relics of his father's life, Michael made a decision. He would answer his father's call, not with the anger and hurt of the past, but with a newfound willingness to build a bridge over the troubled waters that had separated them for so long. The journey towards forgiveness, he knew, would not be easy, but somewhere in the depths of his wounded heart, a flicker of hope ignited. The drive to the hospital was a blur. Fields of corn sped past Michael's window, but Michael saw none of it. His mind was a whirlwind of emotions.
How do you speak to a ghost from your past?
He gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. As he neared the hospital, a wave of nausea washed over him. He pulled into the parking lot, the engine ticking softly. He sat there for a moment, gathering his courage. The sterile smell of antiseptic hit him as he stepped off the elevator. He followed the nurse, each step echoing, his heart pounding. The nurse stopped at a door at the end of the hall.
He's been asking for you.
She gave him a reassuring smile, then stepped aside. He hesitated, then pushed the door open. His father lay in the bed, pale and breathing shallowly. Michael stood rooted, his gaze fixed on the figure in the bed. His father stirred, his eyes fluttering open. He turned his head slowly, his gaze meeting Michael's. A flicker of recognition crossed his face.
Michael, you came.
Michael stepped forward, drawn to the bedside. He reached out and took his father's hand. His father's grip was surprisingly strong. The silence that descended upon the room was not the familiar icy silence of Michael's childhood. This silence held a different weight, the weight of unspoken emotions, of shared history, of the fragile truce being forged between a father and son who had been estranged for far too long. Michael sat beside his father's bed, their hands clasped together, a tangible link bridging the chasm of years and unspoken words.
It's different now.
The rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor punctuated the silence, a constant reminder of the fragility of life, of the preciousness of time. Sunlight streamed through the window, painting stripes of gold across the floor, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Outside, the world bustled on, oblivious to the intimate drama unfolding within the sterile confines of the hospital room. Michael studied his father's face, his gaze tracing the lines etched by time and hardship, the map of a life lived on the road, a life defined by miles logged and deadlines met, a life where emotional connection had always taken a back seat to the demands of the open road. He saw a flicker of pain in his father's eyes, a hint of regret that mirrored his own.
I'm sorry for everything.
His father's grip tightened slightly on his hand, a silent plea for understanding, for forgiveness. And in that moment, Michael felt a shift within himself. The anger and resentment that had festered for so long began to recede, replaced by a wave of empathy, a realization that his father too carried his own unseen wounds, his own burdens of regret and unspoken love.
It's okay, Dad. I understand now.
And so, in that fragile truce, they found a semblance of peace, a tentative step towards healing the wounds of the past.
Michael squeezed his father's hand gently, acknowledging the unspoken emotions between them. He had imagined this moment, rehearsed the angry accusations. But now, faced with his father's frailty, his anger crumbled. The words, the apologies, were almost beside the point. What mattered was this moment of connection, a tentative step towards healing. He thought of his own daughter, her laughter a source of joy. He would move forward with grace and forgiveness. His voice trailed off, the weight of unspoken words too heavy. The The silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken apologies. I didn't know how. His father whispered, "I'm sorry." "It's okay, Dad,"
Michael said softly, his voice thick with emotion. He wasn't sure if he fully meant the words, but he knew holding on to anger would only poison him. A tear rolled down his father's cheek. He closed his eyes, his chest heaving. Michael sat with him, holding his hand. As the sun set, Michael felt a sense of peace. It wasn't complete healing, but a softening. Forgiveness was a journey, a winding path, and he was ready to take the first step. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be setbacks, moments of doubt, but he carried within him the seeds of forgiveness. The hospital room became a sanctuary where time seemed to slow, the outside world faded into the background. The heart monitor's beeping became a soothing metronome, marking moments with grace. Michael returned daily, finding purpose. He spent hours by his father's bedside, reading from a well-worn Bible, offering comfort and solace. Michael listened intently, absorbing his father's words, filling in the gaps in his own understanding of the man who had always seemed so distant.
I learned of my father's difficult upbringing and the sacrifices he made for our family.
He began to see his father as a complex individual shaped by his own experiences.
The stories, though fragmented, revealed a depth of emotion I had never witnessed.
As the days turned into nights, the silences between them grew shorter, the conversations flowed more easily.
I shared stories of my life, of my marriage, my daughter, the joys and challenges of fatherhood. I spoke of my fears, my deep desire to break the cycle of pain haunting our family.
And to his surprise, his father listened with an attentiveness Michael had never experienced.
I offered words of encouragement, wisdom from my own life's journey. I spoke of the importance of family, the enduring power of love, and the grace of forgiveness.
In these quiet moments of shared vulnerability, a profound transformation took place. The walls that had separated them crumbled, revealing a depth of love and understanding Michael never thought possible.
I realized forgiveness wasn't about condoning past mistakes, but releasing bitterness and resentment. It was about seeing my father as a flawed, complex human deserving of compassion and love.
The love he felt wasn't idealized, but a deeper love born of understanding, acceptance, and the possibility of healing and reconciliation. One afternoon, the sunlight slanting through the window seemed to hold its breath. Michael sat by his father's bedside, a worn Bible resting on his lap. The words blurred before him, a lifetime of unspoken questions welling up inside.
I saw my father, his breathing shallow but steady, seemed adrift in a sea of memories, his brow furrowed with a lifetime of unvoiced emotions.
Suddenly, his father's hand, gnarled with age and speckled with sunspots, reached out, clutching Michael's arm with surprising strength. His eyes, once distant and clouded, focused on Michael with a laser-like intensity that pierced through the years of separation.
Michael, I need to say this. I wasn't the father you deserved. I chose the road, the open highway, over being there for you. I thought providing was enough.
A tear, a tiny diamond of regret, escaped from the corner of his eye and traced a slow path down his weathered cheek. It was a confession whispered in the twilight of a life lived, a testament to the enduring power of regret.
For me, the words were a punch to the gut, a release of years of pent-up frustration and longing. Michael's hand, as if acting on its own accord, reached out and covered his father's. The warmth of the contact, skin to skin, was electric.
It was a simple gesture, yet it spoke volumes, a wordless acknowledgement of the pain they had both carried for so long. Forgiveness wasn't about condoning his father's choices, but about freeing himself from the past.
It's okay, Dad, I understand.
The words, simple yet profound, hung in the air between them, a fragile bridge spanning the gulf of years and unspoken words. His father's grip on his hand tightened momentarily, his eyes closing as if in relief. A wave of peace, tentative yet palpable, settled over the room. It wasn't a magic erasure of the past, but a recognition of their shared humanity, their shared capacity for both love and error. The setting sun cast long shadows across the floor, painting the sterile hospital room in hues of orange and gold. It felt like a new beginning, a promise of healing, of reconciliation. They sat in comfortable silence, father and son, their hands clasped together, the weight of the past lifting, replaced by a fragile hope for the future. In that quiet communion, Michael realized that forgiveness wasn't a single act, but a process, a journey they would navigate together, one step at a time. And as he sat there, bathed in the golden glow of the setting sun, he knew with a certainty that transcended words that he was finally ready to let go of the past and embrace the healing power of forgiveness. The road to healing stretched out before Michael, uncertain, daunting, yet leading him back to wholeness. It was a winding path with twists, turns, doubt, and hope. His father's health wavered, fragile as butterfly wings, yet a glimmer of peace settled over his father.
I returned to the hospital, feeling a need to be present.
He read aloud from the worn Bible, offering comfort. They talked about life, loss, faith, and forgiveness. One evening, as the setting sun painted the hospital room in hues of amber and rose, Michael brought his young daughter to visit her grandfather. The little girl, her eyes wide with a mixture of curiosity and apprehension, approached the bed cautiously, her tiny hand tucked securely in her father's.
Grandpa, Daddy says you're going on a long trip.
A smile, tinged with sadness but filled with a love that transcended words, spread across his father's face.
That's right, sweetheart, but I'll be watching over you always.
In that moment, as Michael witnessed the tender exchange between his daughter and his father, he felt a profound sense of completion, a healing that extended beyond his own wounded heart. The cycle of pain, the legacy of absence that had haunted his family for generations, was broken. In its place, a new legacy was being forged. A legacy of love, of forgiveness, of the enduring power of grace to heal even the deepest wounds. The road to forgiveness is rarely easy. It requires courage and a willingness to confront the pain of the past. But as Michael discovered, the rewards are immeasurable. In choosing to forgive his father, he liberated himself from bitterness. Forgiveness led him to a place of healing and wholeness.
As I held my daughter close, I whispered a prayer of gratitude for the enduring power of love to heal even the deepest wounds.
The road ahead might hold challenges, but Michael knew he would face them with a heart open to forgiveness, a journey that had led him home at last.